Why is God silent to my suffering? This is a question that many of us have asked at some point in our lives. It's a question that can bring feelings of anger, confusion, and despair. But as we look to the Bible for answers, we find that God's silence is not a sign of neglect or indifference. Psalm 46 verse 10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." This verse reminds us that in the midst of our suffering, we are called to quiet our hearts and trust in God's sovereignty. God is not silent because He is absent, but because He is inviting us to seek Him in the silence. Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 to 9 reminds us that "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This verse reminds us that God's ways and thoughts are beyond our understanding. He may not always answer our questions or solve our problems in the way we expect, but we can trust that His plans for us are for our own good and for His own glory. In John chapter 16 verse 33, Christ says, "I have told you these things, so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." This verse reminds us that suffering is a reality of living in a fallen world, but through Christ we have hope and peace that transcends our circumstances. Additionally, in Romans chapter 8 verse 28, it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." This verse reminds us that even in the midst of our suffering, God is working for our ultimate good and His greater purpose. We may not understand the reasons for our suffering, but we can trust that God is using it for our growth and His glory. James chapter 1 verses 2 to 4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." This verse reminds us that suffering is an important opportunity for growth and maturity in our faith. It helps us to rely on God more fully and to become more like Christ. Psalm 34 verse 18 tells us, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." This verse reminds us that even when we feel alone and abandoned in our suffering, God is close to us and He is our salvation. He is a God of compassion and mercy, and He is faithful to bring us comfort and healing. Another important thing to remember is that God understands our suffering because He Himself suffered. In Isaiah chapter 53 verse 3, the Bible says, He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Christ, the Son of God, came to earth and experienced the full range of human emotions and suffering. He was rejected, beaten, and crucified. He understands our pain and suffering, and he is not only present with us, but also empathizes with us. He is not a distant God, but one who has walked in our shoes. Furthermore, in Hebrews chapter 4, verses 15 to 16, the Bible says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." This verse reminds us that Christ, as our high priest, understands our struggles, and that we can approach God confidently with our pain, knowing that we will find mercy and grace to help us in our time of need. God is not silent to our suffering. He is present, active, and understands our pain. He invites us to trust in His sovereignty, wisdom, and love. He is working for our ultimate good and His greater purpose. He is using our suffering as an opportunity for growth and maturity in our faith. He is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. He is a God of compassion and mercy, and He has walked in our shoes, so He understands our pain and suffering. He invites us to approach Him confidently and to find hope, peace, and comfort in Him. I hope you found this video helpful. Please share your experiences with us in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again in my next video. God bless you.